I think success to me is just doing everything that I can possibly do to achieve my goals, whether or not I achieve them. I think the end goal for me is less important than the path you take to get there and what you learn about yourself along the way. Just realizing that I'm strong, I'm tough, I'm powerful, and I can get through hard times and I can do hard things.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Have you guys heard of Beam? I have been absolutely loving their products lately. Beam is a CBD company that's making waves in the running world by offering products that combine THC-free CBD with other high-quality ingredients. It was founded by two ex-professional athletes with the idea that everyone should have the chance to experience what better feels like. Whether you're sore or stressed, Beam is key for recovery and self-care. Try it for yourself with 15% off using the code FTLR from beamtlc.com. I recommend Beam Dream Powder or the Focus Capsules. This episode is brought to you by SuperCoffee, the healthy, delicious alternative to sugary coffee drinks. SuperCoffee was recently named the fastest growing food and beverage brand in America by Inc. magazine, and after tasting a bunch of their flavors, I can see why. Their coffees contain zero sugar, and many of them contain 10 grams of plant-based protein. They're growing in popularity in the running community, and I'm excited to share a special discount with you. They offer a 60-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you don't love it, you get your money back, no questions asked. Grab 15% online with the code FTLR or look for them nationwide in 25,000 stores like Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, Kroger, and CVS. Cheers. Welcome back. I have Maddie Alm joining me for a podcast today. Maddie, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, we are live in Boulder with two functioning microphones and excited to chat here.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be great.
For sure. So first question is always a hard one. Who is Maddie?
Well, I am both a runner and a dietitian. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, originally just outside. Grew up here, went to the University of Colorado, where I was a student athlete. I was on the track and cross country team. And then I went on to get my master's in nutrition. And now I'm a dietitian and I work with athletes, a lot of them in Boulder as well. So I've kind of come full circle. And then I'm also coaching at my old high school, which is really fun. So I do a lot of things involving running, I would say. But I have a lot of things that I like to do outside of running as well. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Have you always had that balance, or was it sort of something you've intentionally focused on recently?
You mean the balance with like things outside of running? Yeah. That's always been a big part of my life, is having something else. I think for me, it just takes the pressure off of my performances and gives me some self-worth outside of running. So that has something that I think has helped me be a better athlete.
So it's interesting. A lot of the people I talk to that live in Boulder aren't from Boulder. Mm-hmm. So what is it like being from the area and living in the area?
Yeah, I think I'm one of the few natives that I know. I mean, it's changed a lot from growing up. I grew up in Louisville, which is just outside of Boulder. And, I came down.
Don't call it Louisville.
Don't call it Louisville. We're not Kentucky. Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. Like the traffic is insane. I still feel like I'm on the time of when I was in high school. Driving to Boulder was like 15 minutes and now it's more like 25, but I still leave with 15 minutes thinking it's the same thing. You think I would learn, but yeah. So it's definitely it's been crazy to see Boulder grow and change and turn into like this running mecca in the US. Just having been here my whole life. I also think when I moved outside of Colorado, I realized how lucky I was to have like the trails and everything that I do, because running other places hasn't compared so far. So
very cool. I am a new Boulder resident, so apologies for contributing to the traffic, but no apologies for being here.
I'll allow it.
So you're a dietitian. You are a dietitian for and train with many of the athletes on Team Boss. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the team environment and what it's like to be a part of such a group.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to be a part of Team Boss. I think we're pretty unique for an elite group in that, especially as a dietitian, I notice everybody has an awesome relationship with food and good balance with running in life. I think a lot of younger athletes look at runners like Emma and expect them to be just hyper focused on running and, never eating dessert or never doing anything, that's fun outside of running. And that's really not the case. And so it's been fun for me to experience the balance just with, we'll play volleyball when we're in Crested Butte and it gets very, very competitive to a point that's kind of scary sometimes.
Who's the most competitive at volleyball?
Either Joe or Emma for sure.
I see
no
that.
Doubt. But it's just fun to see that you can have fun and work hard and have fun while working hard. And so I've really enjoyed seeing how much balance there is on the team. And I think it's something that's unique that a lot of younger runners, I think, could benefit from understanding that balance.
So it's a balance with both food and with running. I was talking with Kara about this, and she was saying that the way that you guys talk about food, show balance with things outside of running is incredibly unique. And she was like, I wish I saw more of that. And I wish there was more of that today. Is it an intentional effort to share all of that? Or is it it's just second nature and that's you're sharing your day and that's what's going on in your day?
For me, it's a little bit of both. Again, just being a dietitian and having been a female athlete my whole life, I have seen the lack of resources for young female athletes that provide them with information that's not just based on social media or what other athletes are doing, or even just talking about the fact that, I eat ice cream a lot. I had ice cream 2 nights before my race at the Olympic trials. And, most high schoolers would be like, oh, I don't eat ice cream for the whole season. And, they don't understand that there is that balance. So for me, I think it comes from a place of wanting to share that and help younger athletes realize that there can be fun foods and foods they consider less healthy. You'll still perform well. And I think for my teammates too, they've definitely become more aware of the effect that they have in a positive way. I know Corey has said to me multiple times, she'll get questions about what she eats and stuff. And she's really careful to answer those questions in a way that's I only do what works best for me.
Right.
You might not need to do what I do. And so it's been great to see the awareness, the self-awareness of my teammates in being careful about how they're communicating food-related talk or body-related talk. And I think that's really important for younger athletes, not to hear mixed messages and understand that everyone's different.
Totally. I love that. My coach also uses the phrase fun foods and will explicitly put on the training log, post race, eat fun foods, pizza a day, burgers, awesome. Things like that. Personally, I'm the heaviest I've been in the last 5 years and running the best I've ever been running.
Yeah.
And am the happiest I've ever been as a runner. And so it's it's a couple more pounds, but I'm eating whatever I want. I'm eating what I know I need. Mm-hmm. And I'm filling the rest in with fun foods, as you said. And so I think that, sure, it's one thing for me who's not a professional runner to share that, but it's another to see that's the approach of professional runners who are literally going to the Olympics and competing at the highest level, and they're achieving that same level of success. And on the fun side, the first time I was scheduled to do a podcast with Aisha, we had to reschedule because she was, you guys were at brunch and nice. She had
priorities,
mimosas after Corey's 800 meter PR in practice. Yep. She was so apologetic. And I was like, no, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Have fun. You're allowed to have fun.
Right. Exactly.
And in that podcast, she talked about how as a 30-year-old professional athlete, she's still in the sport because she's having all that fun. And I'm not saying 30 is old. I'm 30 and I don't think it's old. But she's been running for 20 years and she's still doing it because she's having fun.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big part of longevity in the sport. A lot of athletes get caught up in one season or one performance, and they're willing to sacrifice their long-term health for that one thing. And then it's a constant uphill battle to get back to where they were. And they, struggle with body changes and relationships with food. And, like you said, you could weigh more and be happier and well-fueled and perform better than you did if you weighed less and were unhappy and restricting. So there's a lot more to it than just body weight. It's more about finding that balance that allows you to have a long and injury-free career so that you can compete, beyond college and well into your 30s and beyond if you want to. So, I think it's
many
important.
years longer than 30.
Many years longer than 30. Yeah, exactly. But, especially at a high level, that's something that is super important if you want to have a long career. So I really love that my teammates have that balance and that they have been able to show, hey, it pays off. We have these long careers. We're all going to Tokyo and crushing it. So
I think it's like a icing on the cake, like food pun intended, that many of them are going to Tokyo. And it's a validation of your approach and their approach to say, you can do this by having fun and being happy and eating what you want, as long as you're doing what you need.
Exactly.
So when an athlete comes to you and says, I'm interested in improving my nutrition, or I want to think more about how to fuel properly, besides for saying it depends, what is your first or what is your second thing that you would say to them?
I'm trying really hard not to say it depends. So I would say,
but talk about why you would say it depends first.
Yeah. So I would say it depends because everybody in, what they need to work on or what gaps there are to fill in their nutrition, it just varies so much from person to person. And, their goals, what their season looks like, what their training looks like. Are they coming back from injury? Have they been underfueled? There's so many factors that go into somebody's approach to nutrition that I need to consider as a professional. So yes, my number one answer is always it depends. But from there, usually what we do is just kind of look at, a typical day for them and talk about what are the gaps that I see in their approach to fueling. And I would say most often what I see is not eating enough carbs, not getting snacks throughout the day or balanced snacks, and then just not really eating when they're hungry and kind of like waiting till the next meal instead of just having a snack and maybe pushing their meal back. So I would say those are probably the three most common things that I see. But again, it just varies so much. So it's hard to say.
I work with enough dietitians to know that was going to be your first answer. And I wanted to frame it that way.
I appreciate that.
Like you see all this on social media of people asking athletes, what do you eat? And it's like, there's no reason. I mean, ask them what they do for fun. Ask them what their workout is. Not with the intent of doing the same workout, but again, it's like, it depends. There's so much variability in each person.
Yeah. And if you ever see somebody making like a one size fits all recommendation, that's a red flag because it's probably not applicable. We could all eat and train the exact same and would still look and perform completely differently. So, what works for one person probably won't work for you. And, I think it's more important to figure out what works best for you than it is to try to imitate somebody else.
For sure. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you as a runner.
Awesome.
Do you remember your first run?
My first run? Great question. I've never been asked that. The first run that stands out to me was in elementary school. We had something called the jogathon, where you do laps and you get like a punch every lap and people pledge however much money per lap that you do. And I had the worst side ache of my entire life.
From all the punches, right?
From the punches, yes. I think I was 9 and I can still remember the pain of that side stitch. And I was like, hunched over to one side and I was not enjoying myself. It was a hot day. We were out on the field. That was honestly my first run and probably explains why I didn't really run again until high school. So, of course, that wasn't my last run because now I absolutely love it, but it was a rough intro.
That is a rough intro.
Yeah.
So fast forward to high school, you've decided for some reason you're going to run again. What was that reason?
I ask myself that a lot. I have no idea. I played soccer and my parents had suggested trying cross country. And I was like, why would I run if I'm not chasing a ball? There's no point. That just doesn't sound fun to me. And then I think my friends were doing it. So of course, you're 15. If your friends are doing it, you have to do it. So I went to like 3 summer running practices, super early. I am not a morning person. So that was a struggle. And then from there, I had a kid tell me that he didn't think I could make varsity. And so of course I wanted to prove him wrong.
Varsity, yeah.
And I went out for the time trial and I made varsity and realized that, hey, it's actually not so bad running without a purpose, more or less. yeah, now I absolutely love it. And it's something that's part of my daily life.
So you go from not running for all those years in between to enjoying it to running in college and running professionally. At what point did you realize that the collegiate running might even be possible?
Yeah. So high school, I didn't start running till my junior year. And then I actually played soccer at the same time and didn't fully transition to running until my senior year. And I didn't even really know that you could run in college. I knew nothing about running. And so when my teammates were looking at colleges, I was like, oh, cool. Is that something that I could do? And I started kind of looking into it, but I hadn't really been sure if that was something I wanted to do. And then I actually did like walk on to the CU team. I was an invited walk on my freshman year. I did practice for a week and didn't like it. And I actually quit. And then I took the whole year off. I didn't do really anything related to running for like 9 months. And I think what happened for me is I just realized I missed it. And it was something that brought me a lot of joy, gave me an outlet, gave me, you know, a purpose outside of school, and created a team and a culture. And so I wanted that back and decided to walk on again. So 2 times walk on.
Walk it back.
Yep, walk it back. Yeah, and here we are.
And did you run today?
Today I did run.
Why did you get out the door today?
Well, because I can. I feel very fortunate to be healthy and consistently running. And I just love, you know, the trails out here. And I was coaching this morning and then ran from their practice on a beautiful trail. So yeah, it's just kind of how I start my day. And it's what I like to do in the mornings.
Nice. Do you do most of your runs solo? Or do you do most of your runs with the team?
So we do workouts with the team, like track workouts and long runs and stuff. Easy runs, it just kind of depends with my work schedule, what I can squeeze in. And I'm also, since I'm coaching in the summer, their practices are in the morning. So sometimes I'll just kind of run from wherever we meet, or sometimes I'll go meet my teammates for a run. It just kind of depends on what I have on the schedule for that day.
And do you listen to music when you run solo, or do you just stay in tune with nature?
I listen to podcasts more often, I would say, especially like when my easy runs are longer than 6 miles. It's nice to have a distraction.
Yeah.
So yeah, mostly podcasts. Music really throws me off. I feel like I run weird when I listen to music because I try to run to the beat unintentionally, and it's all bad. So
Got it.
Podcasts all the way.
What are the podcasts?
I'm really big into true crime. So pretty much exclusively true crime podcasts. I think I've exhausted every single true crime podcast that you could possibly think of.
Out solving crimes on the trails of Boulder.
That's what I try to do. Yeah.
Nice. So a few weeks ago, you were in Eugene for the Olympic trials. Did you ever think that would be possible?
I think it was something I had wanted for a long time. I didn't think it was a possibility until probably fairly recently, within the last year or so.
What was that switch?
I guess it was a combination of, you know, Joe, my coach, really believing in me in practice, and my teammates really believing in me. And then I kind of started to believe in myself. And when I started to have, you know, breakthrough performances and improving my times, and, you know, started to compete against and even beat some big names, I kind of switched my mentality to why not me? You know, why can't I go and achieve this dream? And yeah, I mean, I was so excited when I finally got the standard and checked that box of this long time goal that I've had.
How long had that been a goal?
I think it's something that every runner wants to say they've done, but I don't think it was a realistic goal for me, like on my list really, until probably a couple of years ago.
So prior to that, was it something like, it was like the North Star? It was like, best case scenario, this happens.
Yeah, I guess it's more for me that I never had thought about it. I think this, like the story of my running career is always, I didn't think about continuing until like the very last minute. So like with walking on to the CU team, and then at the end when I had finally, you know, like worked my way up from the worst one on the team to becoming an All-American, very last race of the season, Mark Wetmore said to me, have you thought about continuing to run? And at that point, I'd committed to grad school in San Diego. I decided I wanted to be a dietitian. And I was like, no. And he's like, well, you should. So I was like, oh gosh, now I have to like figure out, you know, do I want to keep running? And so I kind of like wandered around for a little bit, decided to keep running. And then it was just kind of the same thing. Like every year I'm like, do I want to keep running? Should I keep going? So I don't think it was really on my radar because I was so focused on, do I keep running or
Right.
not? So once I had committed to continuing and realized that it wasn't something I was ready to be done with, I think that was when qualifying for the trials really became a goal of mine.
Do you think now that you've done it, it's sort of unlocked another level of potential for you in terms of like where your own bar is at?
I think it really has. I mean, I went into the trials ranked 29th. I was the second to last one in, and I finished 12th, which really was way ahead of my seed. And again, I think just running without the fear of, getting last or being beat, and just going into it with the mindset of, I am so excited to be here and I can't wait to see what I can accomplish. I feel like running, free from those fears mentally really allowed me to compete like I've never competed before. And, even if the races on paper weren't crazy fast, it was something I've never done before. And I feel like I handled that new situation better than I would have in the past. And so it just really made me leave Eugene feeling really optimistic and excited to see if I can carry that over. What else can I accomplish? And, what could be in the books next year? And, even after that. So yeah, I do think it kind of unlocked a new side of running for me.
How did you get there mentally? You said that you were basically on the start line, not afraid.
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to the story of my running career, I've always kind of been, like the underdog, like somebody who barely got there. And I think that kind of created this imposter syndrome that I dealt with, really probably still deal with, but struggled with a lot throughout college and even high school. I would look at the heat sheets and look everyone's times up, in mile split immediately and be like, okay, they've run way faster. They've run way faster. I would kind of already position myself, where do I think I'm going to finish just based on who was in the race, instead of really just saying, I'm going into this race to finish as high as I can. I don't care what other athletes have accomplished. And so I started trying to shift my mindset going into races, and I stopped like looking up competitors' PRs and what they've run that season, and really have leaned into the fact that everyone's going to show up on a different day at a different time. And just because somebody ran really well in February doesn't mean they're going to run really well in May or whatever. So instead of going into that race in May afraid of somebody who ran fast in February, I went into it saying, this is my race to run fast and I'm going to do what I can. So I think just believing in myself and not comparing myself in a negative sense to the people around me, and just trusting my training and trusting my own strength mentally and physically was a big change in how I'd been running before, I think.
So that makes sense. That is awesome. Was that an easy process for you, or was it like this is what I'm going to do and it's going to be the way it is? Or was there a lot of work that went into functionally getting there?
It was definitely not an easy process. I think I've really been working on that since I've been with Joe. So it's been like 3 years that I've been with Team Boss. And, again, coming onto Team Boss with the PRs that I had in college compared to, Emma and Corey, it was intimidating. And I think part of it too was just getting my butt kicked every day in practice by these amazing runners, and slowly, working my way up to being able to keep up with them, and to even, leading reps and then being fully involved in the workout. So I think once I saw that happening, I was able to trust myself more. And something Joe really worked with me on this year is just in practicing, pushing through the hard stuff. So, like it's okay to breathe hard. It's okay to feel tired, but you have to make a decision when you start to feel that way. Do you let yourself off the hook and slow down, which I've definitely done a lot of races? Or do you say, everybody else feels this way, I'm going to be tougher and push through it, and know that your body can do things that you don't think it can? So I think it was just a combination of every workout that got really hard. I was like, this is the practice for my 5K. Like, this is the 4th K of a 5K or the 3rd K. And this is where I need to be tough. And so Joe would always say, like be tough. He wanted it so bad for me. He's like, I can't run the standard for you. Like, you have to do this. So every workout, using it as an opportunity to not only practice that pace, but mentally, how am I going to get through this feeling in a race? And I think knowing what to expect and knowing how to push through it made it a lot easier for me to achieve those goals.
The embracing discomfort piece is so empowering because, right, like if you're running at your threshold or at your capacity, it's not comfortable.
No.
And you can't race comfortably and perform at your best. Mm-hmm. You can run comfortably and perform okay, but if you want to compete, you obviously have to get uncomfortable. So the best marathon I ran, at mile 20, I made a conscious decision, like, get uncomfortable. I literally said it out loud. I said, you've come this far, don't screw it up now. Mm-hmm. And let's see how much pain you can hold.
Exactly.
And the next 10K was brutal. And I ran that marathon 20 minutes faster than I'd ever run a marathon before. And it was less about the PR and the time and more about that mental shift of, wow, when I wanted to back off, I stepped on the gas and accelerated through the pain. And once you do that the first time, it sounds like this is your experience. Yeah. My experience was once you do that the first time, you know that you can do it and you can do it again. And the threshold of pain tolerance and what you're capable of just increases.
Yeah. And I think even more so, the fear of it goes away because you've been there. It was hard. It sucked, but you got through it and you finished. And it feels so good to finish a race and achieve a goal. And it feels so much better to do that than to finish a race saying, I know I was a baby the third K. Yeah. Why did I do that?
Yeah, totally. So to get through that or to get to that, was it just the work with Joe? Did you do it like other mental prep? Did you do reading? Like, how did you, again, it's not enough to just say, I want this, so I'm going to do it. There's a lot of like support that I'm less talking to you and more talking to the people listening. There's a lot that goes into, like, for me, I was reading Endure, and it talked about accepting pain and being comfortable with it and driving it instead of letting it drive you. And when you're in control, you can make friends with it and it's not going to, back you down.
Yeah. I think for me, it was a lot of acknowledging my weaknesses in that sense and acknowledging during those races when I made mistakes or I didn't commit that was the reason I didn't achieve my goal, not because I wasn't fit, not because I wasn't working hard. It all came down to what I was willing to do mentally, almost more so than physically. And I think once I kind of accepted that and just knew that that was really what was holding me back, it was just every workout, not letting myself off the hook. No gaps was something that was like my big
I like that
motto. Like anytime I was in a workout and I felt like I was over my head, I just tried to keep a calm mind and just repeat, no gaps, no gaps. Look at the person in front of me and just try to stay as close as possible and just hang on. And my teammates were all, super encouraging. They all knew my goals, which I think really helped too. Just having a support group behind you who knows what you want to accomplish and who believes in you so much, they won't let me off the hook either. So I have,
and vice versa.
And so I have all these people, supporting me and watching me and pushing me every single workout. And I think the combination between that and knowing that I had to make that choice to improve my mentality going into races, that really is what drove me to work on that in practice and ultimately have that breakthrough in May.
Thanks again to Beam for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. As the days start to warm up and get longer, a cool down routine in the evening becomes even more important. Did you know that you can get a subscription to Beam's Dream Powder? It's what I use most nights before bed to help with a refreshing night's sleep. When you subscribe, you'll get the Dream Blend with a bunch of perks like even better pricing, free shipping, a free mug, and a drink frother just for signing up. Dream helps me wind down at night, and it's made with compounds like melatonin and magnesium that support a better night's sleep. Make sure to use the code FTLR at checkout for an extra 15% off the already discounted 20% off monthly rate. Thanks again to SuperCoffee for supporting this episode. I have been loving their French vanilla and hazelnut flavors and the cold brew cans. SuperCoffee combines the caffeine from 2 cups of coffee with protein and healthy fats to give you hours of focused energy with no jitters or crash. I love it as a strong start to the day. Receive 15% off of your purchase at drinksupercoffee.com/FTLR or use the code FTLR at checkout. I recommend trying one of their variety packs or bundles. If you give it a try, let me know what you think. And now back to our conversation. Yeah, I think the mental aspect is so powerful. It's like why I have this podcast, right? It's like you can do the workouts, you can write the training, but if you can't execute, like that's the training that needs to be done. And it wasn't for me until I started doing all of the excess work around mental training that I actually started hitting goals. So I think it's powerful, and the team environment and the way you described it feels like you were focused on staying present. Mm-hmm. Was that a focus as well?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing, is just, I feel like a lot of runners are similar in that you think so far ahead during a workout. Like if I had 6 by a K really fast or whatever, the first K, I'm already thinking about that 6th K. And I can't get to that 6th K until I get through the first 5.
Run the K you're in.
Exactly. Run the K you're in, run the mile you're in. So I was really working on...
But don't run the mile in the K.
Don't do that. No, because then you'd be over. But then, I was just really working on, staying mentally present during every rep, every workout, not getting too far ahead of myself. Because I think that's when, especially in a 5K, you start to panic because it doesn't feel good. I think that was the other thing I realized. You're never going to feel good in a 5K ever. It's just something that is...
First few strides.
Like maybe, if you're having a good day, you feel good the first lap. No, I'm just kidding. But typically for me with 5Ks, I don't feel good. I just don't feel worse. I've realized if I slow down or if I speed up, I feel equally bad. So I would rather
just
run
15
faster.
Minutes of pain.
Exactly. I'd rather run faster and be in the same amount of pain than run
for
slower.
Less time.
Yeah, exactly. And run a slow time and be disappointed. So again, it was just kind of not getting ahead of myself, not panicking when it felt bad, not thinking, oh my gosh, it's so hard this first K. How am I supposed to do these other Ks? And just, running one at a time, staying present, staying focused. And that's where a lot of my like mantras to myself during workouts would come from, like the, no gaps. It's like in this moment, no gap.
Yeah.
And so that definitely helped me too in the 5K to not kind of have that like panic moment where you're like, this is really hard and I don't know if I can do
4K
it.
to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about a breakthrough workout you had this spring.
Yeah. So I actually had a really bad race in Kansas City in like April. And I went out there and tried to run a 5K. And I think I ran 15:55. And it was so hard. And I felt
most
so
listeners
bad.
would be stoked to be running.
Right. But when you're trying to run under 15:20 to be that far off, I was like, oh no. And I did not feel good. So I was like, I don't know, Joe, like it just was really hard. Like we went out hard, which was something I hadn't done yet in a workout. So Joe's really good at taking those kind of bad races and using them as a learning experience to see what we're missing in training. And we kind of decided we were missing that lactate spike that happens when you go out hard and then try to settle. So we did a workout where we did like basically an all-out 800 up in Crested Butte, so at 7,000 feet. We did like an all-out 800 followed by really hard 400 cut-down workout. And so, I had just told myself like, I'm going to spike my lactate as high as I can in this workout so I can really practice for that 5K. So I made that 800 really hard for myself. And the next 400s were a little bit rough. But then this crazy thing happened where all of a sudden I actually started feeling better and we started running faster.
In that workout or in the next couple of days?
In that workout. And Joe had explained it as your body has to catch up to all that lactate that it's producing. And if you give it a chance, it will. And that's exactly what happened. And so I had this moment where I was like, oh, like if you can just hang on when it hurts, like your body's going to catch up.
Yeah.
And so that's how I really practiced in that workout. And it was probably the best workout that I'd had, especially up at CB. And so going into my race at Sound in LA to qualify, I was telling myself that during the race. I was like, remember that workout. It feels hard, but it's going to start feeling better in a second. And sure enough, it did. And so that was really encouraging to have that workout, really can make those connections and see that, okay, yeah, this is what's going to happen, and then apply that to my race. So I think that was really a huge piece of that big PR that got me to the trials.
That's super cool. The different types of workouts can be fascinating. My coach gave me a similar workout like 4 days before I ran a half marathon. And it was the same thing. It was like super, super short rest, fast reps, and it got better as it went on.
Yeah.
And then those adaptations hit quick and
totally,
it feels real good.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something you were talking about before. I'll tell you why. Imposter syndrome. I was talking with somebody a couple weeks ago about the podcast, and she was like, "Oh, what's the most interesting thing that you've learned from the podcast?" And I was like, "That professional athletes experience imposter syndrome." And I'm talking like I've had this conversation with Olympians and medalists and like everyone from the front of the pack to the back of the pack. And I find this fascinating, right? It's like people who are literally at the pinnacle of sport feel like imposters.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your experience with that, and how did you navigate through it?
Yeah. So I think kind of going back to my progression as a runner, being a walk-on to one of the best collegiate programs in the nation was super intimidating.
Right.
And again, I wasn't a
Which
standout.
is totally reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't a standout runner in high school, so I didn't really feel like I had the qualifications to be there in the first place. Even though I had run the time required to walk on, I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's so much faster and they have so much more experience. And so I felt like kind of my whole story at CU was just trying to not be last instead of focusing on
being your best,
being my best.
Yeah.
And that's felt like what I've focused on my whole career, really up until now, after college, trying to enter the post-collegiate world as an unsponsored athlete with like really no idea what I wanted to do. I went into races with the goal of not getting last or not running bad. And if you go into it with that mindset, you're not going to accomplish anything.
Right.
And then fast forward to Team Boss, same thing. I came in with the slowest PRs on the team for sure. But this time, instead of saying, oh man, I don't belong here and I shouldn't be running with these people, I was going to say, I'm going to try to run with these people and I'm going to try to finish with them or ahead of them even, which, that hasn't really happened, but maybe one day. So just shifting my mindset from I don't belong here and I'm going to try to not embarrass myself or not get last to I work just as hard as everybody else. Why don't I belong here? Why shouldn't I be on the start line? And why can't I finish with or ahead of these people? So yeah, it's definitely been, I've been running for 11 or 12 years, and I would say 10 of those were spent with that kind of mindset that I didn't feel like I belonged. So it's hard to undo that for sure. But I feel like this year I proved more so to myself than anything else that I deserve to be here and I work really hard, and why not me, What
is it like to free yourself of that baggage?
It feels really good. I still feel like the Olympic trials was really the first time that I let go of that and just said, I'm going to run. And I've been working so freaking hard these past few years. Like, this is my time for myself to make it worth it. And I don't want to leave anything out here. I don't care. Well, I do care, but I'm less concerned with where I finish, and I'm more concerned with knowing I did everything that I could. And again, regardless of what everyone around me is doing. So just focusing on myself and running the best race I could run was super freeing, and I had fun doing it. And I felt just so happy being there and so excited to have realized this dream. And then to make the final was huge. I was very, again, so happy to be there, and just beyond that, wanted to prove to myself that I belonged there and that I could finish up with these women. So it was really awesome.
Very cool. Fast forward 5 years. What are you really proud of?
5 years from now, I think I would be really proud of my persistence in the sport and resilience. It hasn't been an easy path here. I've been really focused on school and everything else as well. And so I've balanced a lot of things to continue running, sometimes at the cost of getting an injury because I wasn't getting enough sleep or wasn't focusing on recovery. But at the end of the day, again, as an unsponsored athlete, and I think, being 28, people are like, still running, huh? And for me, I just love it. I love running, and I don't feel like I've accomplished exactly what I think I can. I think there's more in there, and I don't want to stop until I feel like I've gotten everything out of it that I can. So I think looking back, I'll be just proud of working through all those things and believing in myself when sometimes nobody maybe did, and surprising a lot of people to get to this point, and just never losing my passion for the sport along the way.
What does success mean to you?
Kind of the same thing. I think success to me is just doing everything that I can possibly do to achieve my goals, whether or not I achieve them. I think the end goal for me is less important than the path you take to get there and what you learn about yourself along the way. And so again, just realizing that I'm strong, I'm tough, I'm powerful, and I can get through hard times, and I can do hard things, and I can be comfortable being uncomfortable, and a lot of things that a lot of people don't push themselves to experience. And these things obviously apply to a lot of parts of life outside of running. So yeah, just success is to me just getting through it and doing things that are hard, and whether or not you achieve your goal, trying, because that's the scariest part sometimes, knowing that you can fail, but not being afraid of that, I think, is success.
So what I love about that answer is that it's not tangible, right? It's something you have full control over. Yeah. It's not making the Olympic team. It's not making the finals. It's not making the trials next go around. Like, all that's kind of outside your control. It's sort of a skill plus luck plus timing.
Totally.
With your definition of success, you drive that, and it's totally up to you to decide to be successful, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing about the sport is every ounce of work that you put in comes down to one race. And sometimes it's just not your day, whether that's in your control or not, who knows? But it's hard because a lot of people feel like they failed if on that one day of the year it doesn't go their way, instead of looking at all the other days of the year that they've had fun or crushed a workout or had an awesome race and has, been successful in other ways. So I think we need, as a sport, need to put less focus on one performance,
right,
and more on, what you're doing to be the best athlete you can be on a daily basis.
I was at the track the other day, and somebody asked me I was doing 12 by 1 minute reps, and on like my 5th or 6th rep, somebody asked, "What are you training for?" Sorry, not during the rep, after the rep. And I had literally just finished the rep, and I was tired, obviously, and I just said life.
That's awesome.
And a woman caught up to me, and I was like, "Did you really just say life as your answer?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." She's like, "Sweet. Like, that's a good way to put into words what I'm training for too." And like, yes, I have races on the calendar, and like, had I not been like mid-workout, I probably would have like said something different.
Sure.
But I think that the less that we, as you said, focus on the one specific race and more about consistency and getting the best out of yourself on a daily basis, or getting good from yourself on a daily basis, I think that's how we get better, right? That's how we stay healthy. That's how we stay happy. And that's how we don't put our eggs in one basket and then burn the basket by accident.
Right. Absolutely.
So switching gears again, bike pun intended, as we're sitting next to a bike. Talk to me about your private practice as a dietitian.
Yeah. So I basically created this business as a way to have a flexible schedule to continue to train. It's really hard. I learned that the hard way, working 40-hour weeks and also trying to cram in your training, something's got to give. For me, it was an injury. So I knew that I wanted to continue to run. And I also knew, being from Boulder, that there's a surprising lack of resources for high-level athletes when it comes to nutrition. There's some great dietitians in the area, but that's fairly recent. And so for me, I thought, well, why don't I take my connections to the running community and, being an athlete myself, and also take my knowledge of nutrition and fill that gap by creating my business, Fueling Forward, to help athletes, post college or even in college, or weekend warriors or whoever, to have that resource to find their full potential, staying fully fueled and learning more about why that's important. And so it's been really fun for me. I love it because it's so different every day. I get to choose who I work with, and, I get to choose what we talk about and all these things. And so it's really fun to kind of have new challenges every day, and everyone's like a different puzzle. And so I feel like I get challenged in ways that I maybe couldn't in other career paths. There's obviously pros and cons to having your own business, but for me, it's really what's allowed me to continue to pursue running at this level. And I've been loving it. It's been really fun.
Very cool. So if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, wow, Maddie seems cool, and I like her approach to eating fun foods, and she sounds like a great runner, and I want to learn from her, what does working with someone like yourself look like? Talk to me about the structure of having a dietitian.
I'm sure you can guess my first response, which is, it depends. But
I wasn't expecting it on that one.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. I mean, it really depends on your goals and what you're working on. So I would say,
like, communication. Is it?
Yeah. Most athletes reach out with some type of race or goal or something in mind. And from there, we kind of create a plan based on a few things and create this approach to fueling that is both long-term and short-term. So let's say someone's training for their first marathon in September. We start working maybe in the summer on general nutrition to support your training. And then we kind of hone in on race day fueling and how can we start practicing that strategy. So when you get to your marathon, you know exactly what to do. You're not going to have stomach issues. It's going to be easy. So we work from kind of both a general and specific standpoint based on your goals to make sure that you're fueling to support your training. And I always encourage athletes, if there's gaps that they feel like they have with just feeling fatigued or struggling with recovery or sleep or whatever, a lot of times nutrition is the answer. And
Right.
It's usually a pretty simple fix. And typically that's eating more, which is good news for most people. So yeah, I think there's always something that we can do as athletes to be better. And I think nutrition is something that's often overlooked. So for most people, it's just figuring out what is it that we're missing? How can we fill that gap? And then, applying it to their real life so they can improve their performance.
Very cool. Yeah, I love it. The eat more is a lovely recommendation to get. So I started working closer with one of our sports dietitians, I don't know, in 2017. She looked at my blood work and she was like, 500 calories a day more. Like,
Nice.
start from there and do nothing else different. I was like, okay, I can do this. And like, my running has improved dramatically since then. I've been able to like basically run 25% more and run harder and faster and have better races and feel happier and sleep better. And it's like, it's amazing how we're trained to think less is more, but really it depends. But for some, more is more.
Right. Yeah. And I think same goes for just, the mentality around like weight and food with running. There's this misconception that, like you said, the less that people eat, the less that they weigh, the more they're going to get out of their running. And really, it's probably the opposite.
Right. It's a temporary, like, good for 3 months.
Exactly. And that's the hard thing,
bad.
is it works temporarily for people.
Right.
But then you have all those other issues that pop up and you can't really get back into a consistent rhythm. So For me, working with athletes, it's important not only to make sure they're well fueled, but that they have a healthy relationship with food, because we have to eat every day, multiple times a day, even beyond our time as athletes. And so that's something that's really important to me, is not just encouraging them to fuel for performance, but also for life, fuel for life,
I was talking with somebody earlier today, and I forget who it was, but we were talking. Oh, so it was a triathlete friend who's a higher end triathlete. And I asked him, I was like, do you consider yourself, we're talking about why he, like basically his motivation. And I was like, do you consider yourself more interested in performance or in health? And he was like, honestly, it's both, but it's a focus on health that leads to performance. He's like, in 2019, I started paying more attention to the things that matter and health. He's like, I've been racing like crazy ever since, and I've been racing well, and I've been training well. He's like, if you don't have the baseline health, you can't improve and you can't stay healthy. And that's obviously linked. And the secret to success in anything is consistency. So apply that to running, and it's consistency and staying healthy. How do you stay healthy? You give your body what it needs. Speaking of giving your body what it needs, talking about your favorite restaurant in Boulder.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's see. Favorite restaurant in Boulder.
We can go by cuisine. Let's start with Mexican.
Okay. So here's an unpopular opinion, and I'm going to get a lot of flack.
We might have to end this conversation right now.
It's not my favorite cuisine.
Okay.
My favorite is like
tread lightly.
Asian type of cuisine.
Okay.
So like sushi, Thai, Indian food.
Those are my 3 next questions.
Great. Perfect. So yeah, to be honest, I mean, I love the Rio in Boulder because of the margs. I'm not going to say their food is fantastic, but I don't think it's bad. Again, unpopular opinion. I like the food there. So the Rio to me is probably like the most fun.
Got it.
Yeah.
What type of food is that?
Mexican.
Oh,
food.
Mexican.
Yeah.
Okay. Sushi.
This is a hidden gem.
Okay.
Niwot Market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a walk up, get it?
Yep. It's owned by one person, and sometimes like he has a helper that works there with him, and he makes all the sushi himself, and it's amazing. So Sachi Sushi in the back of Niwot Market. Highly recommend.
Wow. I was recently informed that much of the fish that's imported from Japan comes to Denver first.
Sushi Den. Best sushi
in Denver
ever. Yeah, it's in Denver.
Wow.
They like fly the fish in every day, and it's fantastic. Very pricey, worth it. Treat yourself.
There was a place in Breckenridge that was incredible.
Yeah.
Like right downtown, and several times I had king salmon sashimi, and I was like, this is the best fish I've ever had.
So good. Yeah.
It was incredible. Thai food.
So Thai food, I actually really like Busaba in Louisville, which technically isn't Boulder, but just outside of it.
We'll allow it.
Yeah, very good. That's probably one of my favorites.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you wish people knew about you besides the not liking Mexican food?
Okay, so I don't know if I wish people knew this about me, and I already regret bringing this up. I already regret saying this. This is where my brain goes when I panic for a fun fact. So here we go. I actually used to jump rope, and I went to the Junior Olympics for jump roping 3 different times. And Corey McGee and I were in the Junior Olympics at the same time. She was there for track. I was there for jump roping.
Did you guys interact?
I highly doubt it, because I don't think people knew jump roping existed. So
incredible.
Yeah, I don't know if I wish people knew that, but now they do. So can't go back.
Millions of listeners all know this now.
Yeah.
Cool. So last question. If people want to find you and Fueling Forward on social media, where can we find you?
So my personal account, or my like running whatever account, is Maddie Alm 12 on Instagram. And then my nutrition account is fueling_forward. And then my website is fuelingforward.com if you're interested in reaching out about working together. And yeah, that's how you can find me.
Cool. Thanks for taking the time to chat.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf.